One of the most underrated communication skills is the ability to take something complex and make it simple. Not shallow, not dumbed down, just clear. And that's hard because when you spend years mastering a topic, it's easy to assume that everyone around you already speaks your language. But clarity isn't about showing how much you know, it's about making sure others can follow you there. Let me tell you a quick story. A few years ago, I was working with a senior engineer, a brilliant mind, deeply technical, but in every cross functional meeting, you could see it happen. People respected his expertise, but they didn't understand him. He'd explain something, and halfway through, the marketing and HR folks would be completely lost. And you could see the frustration on his face. He thought that they weren't paying attention, but actually, he was speaking Greek to an audience that only understood English. So, during one of our one on one sessions, I asked him to explain his project, but imagine that he was explaining it to his grandmother instead. So he laughed. And then he tried. And what came out next was pure magic. He said, imagine your phone has so many photos and it starts slowing down. What I'm building is like a system that automatically deletes the blurry photos and keeps the best ones so the phone runs faster. Suddenly, everyone in the room understood what he was doing. Now, it didn't make the work any less sophisticated, it just made the idea accessible. Now, that's the essence of great communication. If your idea only makes sense to you, it's incomplete. If it makes sense to others, it becomes powerful. Now, over the years, I've realized that simplifying is not a lack of intelligence, it's actually the proof of it. When someone truly understands the topic, they can peel away the jargon and still explain it beautifully. And that comes down to three things: empathy, structure, and storytelling. Now, let's talk about these, not just as tips, but as mindsets. Now, empathy is where clarity begins because before you explain, you have to ask, who am I speaking to? The way you explain artificial intelligence to a software architect would be completely different from how you explain it to a parent or a teacher. Now, the content may stay the same, but the context must change. I often tell people if they don't understand you, don't assume they weren't listening. Assume you didn't speak their language. Now, great communication doesn't simplify ideas, they translate them. Second is structure. Complex ideas often sound messy because we explain them in the order we discovered them, not in the order others can digest them. So before you speak or write, think of a structure like a movie script. There's always a sequence: context first, then conflict, then resolution. So for example, instead of saying our new system uses multi-layered algorithm for predictive modeling, you could say, right now we can only predict customer demand for 1 month ahead. The new system will help us look 6 months ahead and adjust inventory accordingly. Then, if needed, you can explain how it works. See the difference? You gave them a reason to care before you gave them the detail. And finally, storytelling. Even the most technical concepts become memorable when they are wrapped in a story. A story gives meaning to the data. If you're talking about cybersecurity, don't start with firewall layers, right? Start with a story of how a small mistake once led to a major breach and what could have prevented it. Now, if you're explaining a business model, use a metaphor. Say, think of it like Netflix, but for fitness training, or like Uber, but for local artisans. Stories create mental hooks. They give people something to hold on to. The irony is that when you explain something in a simplified form, people sometimes assume it is easy. But it takes enormous skill to make complex ideas sound effortless. Steve Jobs used to say, simple can be harder than complex because simplicity demands that you truly understand the essence of what you're saying, what matters and what doesn't. So the next time you're preparing to explain something important, pause and ask yourself, if someone outside my field were listening, would they still get it? If the answer is no, you need to provide more clarity. And clarity doesn't come from adding more. It comes from removing what's not essential. So here is what I want you to remember. You don't earn respect by sounding complicated. You earn it by helping others understand something they couldn't before. Because when you make complex things simple without making them small, you're not just a communicator, you are a bridge builder. And in a noisy world full of jargons and over explaining, clarity is leadership.